Your memories are unreliable narrators as to the events that have taken place in your life. Sometimes they're even downright porcupine liars. That includes that childhood trauma that you may have been processing in therapy. That includes memorable days like the day that you got married or had your baby. What you're remembering isn't exactly what happened. You are embellishing it, you are adding details, and you're leaving things out every time you dredge that memory up. And here's the kicker. The more emotional and significant that memory is, the more your brain distorts it. This is damaging because these are the memories with the most consequences for people involved. This isn't just inconvenient. It can be downright damaging to people's reputations, to careers, and it has sent people to prison, and it has even built multi-million-dollar personal development empires on false foundations. And we're going to dig into all of that in this video. I'm Bron Martin, hypno healer and subconscious storyteller. For many years, I was the victim of the abuse that I suffered as a child, with both of my parents addicted to substances, and they didn't have any coping mechanisms to deal with their own trauma, and they didn't have any tools to regulate their nervous system. That meant that they didn't lash out. And I held on to those memories, and they impacted every area of my life. It wasn't until I discovered hypnotherapy that I realized that I didn't have to be a prisoner to the meaning that I'd placed around those memories, and I was able to free myself. I became a hypnotherapist in 2017, and I have now guided over 10,000 women through their own body, life, and mind transformations with my programs, my hypno recordings, and my one-to-one practice. Your mind is powerful, and I'll show you how to use it. So most people believe that their memories, it's like a videotape up there, that you're recording things that happened. And when you access a memory, when you think back to a time, place, people, and the events around it, that you're just pressing play. And then it's just, it's like you were there, like you're watching a movie. That is not the case. That is so far from the case. We're going to go into the suffering that we place upon ourselves and in the lives of others when the memories that we have aren't correct. And sometimes the memory didn't exist in the first place. It was created. So Kathy Bates was in an interview with CBS, and she was expressing the regret that she hadn't thanked her mother for the Oscar that she won when she won the Oscar for Misery back in 1991. And she had held on to that for so many years, that regret. And you could see that it pained her when she brought it up. And the interviewer said to her, "That's not true. You did thank your mother." And she said, "No, I didn't." And he said, "I've got the recording here." So she must have brought it up in another thing for him to know to bring up the recording. And he showed her a playback of the video where she thanked her mother. And she was in tears, like, "I didn't think I thanked her." And she had been plagued by that misery, get it, since then, right? And so with just that reframe, she was able to free herself from the fact that she hadn't thanked her mother. Every time you call up a memory, you're not just retrieving it, you're actually reconstructing it. That's why witnesses to crimes are so unreliable, because they're using their brain to fill in missing bits that they don't know, and they're coming up with a complete picture that is entirely different. So you could have 10 different witnesses, and they've got 10 different versions of what happened, what the guy looked like, because it's usually a guy, let's be honest, what the guy looked like. And, it's not even true. But in their mind, that's exactly what happened. And they have full confidence in the fact that they know what happened. They know who this person looked like. And during that reconstruction, your current beliefs, suggestions from others, and even things that you've learned since then become mixed into your memory. Your memories are unreliable narrators in your life, currently matching your current emotional state and beliefs. Now, to set the scene for the next story, first of all, you need to know about something called the satanic panic. This spread through the Western world in the 80s and 90s, and it was where parents believed that children were being taken away and used in satanic rituals and being sexually abused. We'll dive deeper into how that started, but first I want to show you how devastating it can be when these memories are taken as fact. Let me tell you about the Christchurch civic childcare case, which happened in New Zealand, in Christchurch, back in 1991, when I was just a little teenager. This case happened right in the middle of the satanic panic, and it happened in 1991, and it went to trial in 1993. So this is what happened. In November 1991, a 3-year-old's mother, a social worker who had written a handbook on sexual abuse, made an allegation against Peter Ellis that he had sexually abused her child. What started as a single complaint turned into an absolute nightmare that consumed the lives of many innocent people. The investigation used what was considered best practice techniques at the time, specialized interviewing techniques that were designed to help children remember abuse. But here's the thing. Kids are always taking cues from adults. They're prone to flights of fantasy. They want to be right. They want to please you. And they are very susceptible to suggestion. The interview technique started out by like, did an adult touch you? And then they ended up being, where did Peter touch you? A leading suggestive question that starts seeding in that it actually happened. It's an assumed question. Peter touched you. Where did he touch you? The children weren't lying. They were giving the adults what they thought the adults wanted. Children were questioned repeatedly, and they used things like dolls and drawings and more suggestive leading questions. So they started interviewing in November 1991. Nobody made any claims, but they continued progressive interviews until January 1992, when a child claimed that something happened. A child may have asserted that nothing happened at the beginning, but with repeated sessions and suggestions, the child started to reconstruct memories. And if you think about it, if you get called in over and over again, you must be thinking, I must have this wrong because something must have happened if they're making this much of a fuss about it. How damaging now for the child when nothing happened and now they believe they're a victim of this. The case exploded into allegations of ritualistic abuse. The details got crazy. Children described being taken into secret rooms where they were hung in cages, where they were forced to eat feces, where they had needles inserted into their genitals. If you think about a daycare center for a second, where are these rooms, right? Where are these like rooms? Where are these like ritualistic things taking place? What is behind where the babies sleep? Like, it's insane to think that this could have happened in a daycare. The children also reported that they were placed in coffins and they witnessed ritualized killings. So you may wonder, well, how on earth did Peter get away with all of this when they were like taking kids into the rooms, killing somebody, doing all of that stuff, and then taking them back for their nap time? Oh, no. By October 1992, 4 more female co-workers were also implicated, including the creche supervisor. But they didn't go to trial. By the time it went to trial in 1993, all charges had been dropped against those 4 women. So Peter was able to do all of this by himself without anybody else knowing. Okay. Peter Ellis was found guilty. He was sent to prison, and he went to prison for 7 years. Innocent, sent to prison for 7 years based on fabricated, false, seeded memories. Even after he was released from prison, that conviction wasn't overturned until 2022. Bit late for Peter, though, because he died of cancer in 2019. So he had that hanging over his head for the rest of his life. And some people would have said, where there's smoke, there's fire. Don't trust your kids with Peter. What a horrible thing for an innocent man to be convicted of. All based on false memories, seeded memories, and the moral panic of the satanic panic. And also horrifying is that those innocent children have now carried the trauma of things that happened to them that didn't. Let's go to the origin of the satanic panic. It started in 1980 with a book called Michelle Remembers that was published by Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pazder. He claimed that he had helped his patient, Michelle Smith, recover satanic abuse memories using hypnosis. The book was later debunked, and it turned out that he actually divorced his wife and married his patient, which I'm pretty sure is slightly unethical. This book, though, had already done some damage, and that's what sparked the moral panic wildfire that spread around the world. Therapists began using recovered memory therapy, using guided dream analysis, using hypnosis, using somatics, body work. Now, the thing about those modalities, I use them as a hypnotherapist, but I'm using them knowing that our memories are unreliable narrators. And what we're doing is we're looking at how can we reframe this memory, the story, because a memory is just a story, so we can support ourselves instead of sabotaging ourselves. How can I release myself from any trauma that I'm holding on to as I'm holding on to the meaning that I've assigned and associated with that memory? That's when you get to free yourself and liberate yourself. It's knowing that when we go back, we're reconstructing it. It's not exactly what happened, but that's not important. It's really the meaning that you've associated with it. See, the real issue was that these therapists were really just like wiping everything that contradicted their view that this actually works. They were using leading questions in their sessions. They had repeated sessions and they ended up constructing memories that didn't actually happen. They were ignoring ethical guidelines to create this sense of being a part of this outrage, the satanic panic. They wanted to be a part of it. The McMartin preschool case in California, where they alleged that the first allegation was made in 1983, and they alleged that the abuse was going until 1987, and trials went from 1987 to 1990. It became the longest trial and most expensive series of trials in American history. Now, kids were saying that they were taken through secret tunnels and they were going into secret rooms and that animals were being slaughtered and that they were being subjected to satanic abuse. The tunnels were never discovered. The animals didn't exist. None of it happened. Here's where it gets really twisted. Let me introduce you to Barbara Snow. She's a therapist, and shockingly, horrifyingly, she's still a practicing therapist today. She was at the center of the satanic panic in Utah, and she was involved in case after case of implanting false memories. Snow developed a 4-stage process that guaranteed that kids would eventually disclose abuse, because one of the stages was denial. So she would use suggestive questioning and leading techniques to get them out of the denial stage and into the disclose stage. That is nuts. She was at the center of many devastating cases, one of them where a single allegation was made against a babysitter, and then all of a sudden 40 people were implicated in a satanic abuse circle. None of it was proven. A Utah County Chief Deputy Attorney, that was really hard to say, was appalled at her interrogation or interview technique, leading questions. He was watching her through a two-way mirror, and she asked 50 times this child, a 10-year-old child, about being touched by a man. In the end, the child said that it happened because the child was scared that she was going to get yelled at. Even after being criticized in court for her disturbing and irresponsible conduct, Snow kept practicing. And she didn't just practice with other people, she practiced with her family as well. In 2008, she was put on probation for convincing her own family that they were also victims of not only satanic abuse, because that's old now, she's adding a little bit more into it, also military testing. Because she's not the most hinged of people, in fact, she was slightly unhinged, she took a bat to one of her relatives' computers to get rid of notes that were on that computer. She's still practicing today, people, still practicing today. Absolutely shocking. This same woman, Barbara Snow, later became a therapist for someone that you may know in the personal development cult-like guru world, Teal Swan. Teal Swan was born Mary Teal Bosworth, and she has now built a multi-million-dollar personal development cult guru empire based on her fabricated origin story that she was also a victim of satanic abuse, ritualistic abuse. Teal Swan built her entire brand based on the fabricated backstory, her origin story, that a veterinarian, a friend of the family, was preparing her for satanic sacrifice. Yes, you heard me, satanic sacrifice. Born in 1984, Teal's a bit more exciting than most of us because she has the extrasensory abilities of being able to commune with the dead and telepathy. I don't even know if I can get this next sentence out. She also claims to be part alien, an Arcturian alien. It gets better. She says she has X-ray vision, can inject herself into people's brain stems to revive them, and can hear bones, organs, and even tectonic plates moving. It must be very noisy in her world to hear all of that. In 2006, Barbara Snow filed a complaint that Teal Swan had endured 12 years of satanic ritualistic abuse. The same Barbara Snow that was put on probation for convincing her family that they were victims of satanic abuse and military testing, and took a baseball bat to her family's computer. Yeah. Her detailed memories of ritualistic abuse followed the same format as all of the others that Snow had been involved in the middle of that satanic panic. Swan describes being tortured, witnessing murders, and being sewn into human corpses. Memories that followed the exact identical patterns of the satanic panic in the 80s and 90s. Teal Swan has built a multi-million-dollar business teaching people about trauma and healing. Unsurprisingly, mental health experts are deeming her way of teaching, her methods, as being irresponsible and downright dangerous. You see, Teal has become notorious about her teachings about suicide and treating it like a reset button, basically glamorizing suicide. And one of the therapeutic ways that she says is to imagine your own death in grisly detail. Teal has been directly linked to multiple suicide attempts, including one of her followers, Leslie Wansgard, who died by suicide after working with her. In the documentary The Deep End, Teal's ex-boyfriend, Jared Dobson, revealed that the last thing Teal Swan said to him is, "If I were you, I'd just go kill myself. There's no help for you. There's nothing anyone can do." That's not an isolated incident. Her ex-husband, Sardeep Swan, stated, "When you tell people who have nothing to live for that you have the answers they need and that suicide is a reset button, then people will kill themselves." She knows this and she doesn't care. So Teal Swan has built her multi-million-dollar business based on a fabricated backstory that she still believes to be true and based on very controversial methods. Elizabeth Loftus, a cognitive psychologist, proved that you can implant false memories. In her studies, she convinced people that they'd been lost at the mall or that they'd spilt punch at a wedding, both events that never happened. Within weeks, they were recounting these fabricated memories back as if they had happened to them with rich detail. They could describe what they were wearing, how they felt, and what people said to them about the event. The most disturbing part, the memories you're most confident about, the ones with the most emotional charge, are the ones that are most likely to be distorted. Your brain prioritizes emotional coherence over factual accuracy. But here's what's really important to understand. It doesn't mean that we should discount these memories. The issue isn't with the memory itself, it's the meaning that we've placed upon it. A memory can't hurt you anymore. It's the story around it that creates the suffering. When you understand that your memories are unreliable narrators, you can work with them differently. As a hypnotherapist, I work with aged regression. I do work with those memories, but I'm not doing it to excavate some buried truth. It's around what energy, what hold, what suffering is this memory causing you, and how can we reframe it to create a better story that supports you? So you're stripping away the energy, the emotion, and the mental sorrow that you've associated with that memory. If you can change the story that you're telling yourself about a memory, you free yourself from any suffering that memory has created. Whether something happened exactly as you imagined it or not, the power lies in how you choose to interpret and integrate those experiences now. This is about working with the emotional and energetic imprints of these experiences rather than trying to be a detective of your past. Now, here's what you can do. When a memory surfaces that has an emotional charge, whether it's you're making you embarrassed or sad or really, really unhappy in some way, what you can do is, instead of just accepting it as fact, remember that your memory is an unreliable narrator. And wonder, the story that you're telling yourself, is it serving you? Is it keeping you stuck? Or are you open to seeing it differently and telling yourself a new story? Sometimes when we glean a lesson from an experience that has happened to us, then we're ready to leave that story behind. We're ready to shed the meaning that we've associated with it, and we can walk off with the lesson going, oh, I learned something from that. And the thing that you may have learned is that you can rely on yourself, that you can be resilient. There's always something that anything, no matter how awful it is, that has happened for us in our lives, that we can extract something that has helped us grow as a person. This isn't about gaslighting yourself or minimizing actual experiences. It's empowering you to move forward without carrying the heaviness of all of that meaning that you've associated with the suffering that you've experienced in your life. It's about recognizing that you have the power to choose what meaning that you assign to the memories that you have. The event may have happened, but the story you tell yourself about that event is totally up to you. If you want more insights like this on how your subconscious mind actually works, then be sure to subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. And if you have those thoughts that occur to you when you're daydreaming, and you remember when you were 8 years old and that puppy was humping your back and you didn't realize and you just thought it was playing with you, and you don't want that memory anymore, then download the freebie, The Intrusive Thought Incinerator, and get that humping dog out of your mind once and for all. That may or may not have happened to me. I was very innocent, and it wasn't until many years later that I realized what that dog was doing. Just go to bron.cc/intrusive to download that free hypno for yourself today. This information is great, but you know what creates real lasting change? Actually rewiring and rewriting those subconscious stories at the deepest level. And that's what we do in Transform. Understanding that your memories are unreliable narrators is just the beginning. When you realize how much of your identity is built on distorted beliefs and patterns of behavior, you can go in and write the stories that create the changes that you want. Now, I've got 2 hypnos that come to mind that if this whole entire subject has resonated with you, that you're going to love. One of them is little girl regression. So it's going back into those memories and creating a more positive spin for yourself. The other one is inner child healing, because we've all got a part of that little girl inside who needs that love, care, and attention. If you're curious about how it can work for you, go and check it out, because it's only $1 for 10 days and you get to give it a really good go. Go to bron.cc/transform. That's trance as in hypnosis trance. Until next time, remember that it's only when you challenge your reality, you get to change your reality. And you have the power to change your reality today.